listen, there's plenty of gamblers amongst us. There's thrill and get the high and all of that. But at the end of the day, we all want to minimize our risk and have the best reward to risk ratio. It's just entrepreneurship.
When you are betting on yourself or betting on informed decisions, like whether it's financial investments or specifically building your business, those are more controlled risks you're taking. They're things that you're talking about what you have control over versus what you don't have control over. You have more control over the decisions you make in your business than you would, say, gambling, right? There's so much left up to fate. What did that do for you, just the experience of being abroad?
I remember being really fearful of other, right? Which is obviously a very big topic right now, and one that I think a lot of people are really waking up to, which is fantastic. And so to start to go to other places where you really just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, the currency is different, the way people talk to one another is different. It was just sort of being shoved completely out of the bubble of suburban Chicago, let alone even the US, and starting to get comfortable seeing all those differences and sort of just being part of people play differently in different places. And that's good. Okay, this is not a linear path. This world is not linear at all. And there's an infinite amount of things to learn and experience. And so that was kind of like, oh, there's this buffet that I just didn't even know existed before. And now I'm eager to dine at it.
Even people that have the best of intentions, it's hard to understand the world when it's limited to a certain area, because we, not intentionally, but we build these worlds from what we know and can experience, and it becomes really hard to imagine beyond that until you actually go out and experience it.
Yeah, we've got to put people into different bubbles and different zones and sort of shatter that glass that is in between people that we, I think, naturally build as humans to protect ourselves and keep life simple, right? That's where things like prejudice and stereotypes even come from. It's like just the brain wants to simplify everything.
Just talking about like current events, there's been so many studies that have shown that we're not born to think this way and that our prejudices or our stereotypes are taught to us over time. That goes for all experiences because that's just human nature. We want to build systems. We're wired to build systems and make sense of things. There's pros and cons to it, right? So it can help us produce more, but it also can restrict us from exploring other opportunities. And I think whether it's going abroad, taking the big leap of going to a whole nother country, or just going from the suburbs to downtown, or just doing something you're uncomfortable with, they all have impacts by expanding your world. Essentially create more opportunity and different points of view that you wouldn't otherwise have until you actually experienced it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and forcing you to sit with why was I uncomfortable with that? Yeah. I try this food. Oh my God, that's incredible. Why was I scared to try that before? All those things. Yeah, we just have to get out of this sort of deep self-preservation mode that I think so many people get boxed in with.
I just finished reading, I shouldn't lie, I don't read, I do Audible. So I was doing, I just finished listening to The Millionaire Next Door, and it wrapped up with something that was really interesting, that they were talking about risk and how people get comfortable taking risk, and some people don't see themselves being millionaires or specifically business owners. If you're a business owner, you have a higher chance of becoming a millionaire. However, there's also a higher chance you will fail. The point was that oftentimes people avoid becoming business owners or going down that road because they're like, oh, I don't like risk, or they ask the questions like, how do these people get comfortable with risk? And the big takeaway that they said is they don't ever stop feeling risk. They just get up every day, they have the courage to go through it, and they experience it over and over again until it just becomes part of their habit. Like that risk or these behaviors or dealing with uncomfortable is just a habit that you have to go through if you're looking to grow. So since you work with a lot of business owners, how does this come up or relate to some of their current situations or just things you have seen even before now? Why
be an entrepreneur? How did this journey start, right?
Yeah.
And the answers range from all over the place, right? It's not like there's just like 2 or 3 buckets. As I talk to my clients about that and why it matters, it always comes back to, we need to make sure we're satiating whatever that need is and was. And it's okay if that's evolved, right? Like you might have decided to become an entrepreneur for very specific reasons in a moment. You needed money and you felt like you had something that could execute it and you ran with it, but that's no longer an issue. But getting back in touch with sort of that root of what keeps them an entrepreneur. All of those pieces then get weighed against the idea of the risk that one onboards by ultimately owning their own fate, employing themselves, and determining, is there a way to scratch those itches by not taking that level of risk? Because if the answer to that is yes, then likely they'll go do that. Listen, there's plenty of gamblers amongst us. There's thrill and get the high and all of that. But at the end of the day, we all want to minimize our risk and have the best reward to risk ratio. It's just entrepreneurship.
When you are betting on yourself or betting on informed decisions, like whether it's financial investments or specifically building your business, those are more controlled risks you're taking. They're things that you're talking about what you have control over versus what you don't have control over. You have more control over the decisions you make in your business than you would, say, gambling, right? There's so much left up to fate.
Totally. What are my objectives? What's the bet I want to make on those? Why do I feel good about that, right? Instead of just, it's an 11, double down, right? We have more information. We have more ability to make an informed decision. And this can apply to anything. This doesn't need to just be entrepreneurship. Those of us that are perhaps on the more confident or cocky side will often just say, okay, I see how the pieces connect. Go. Shipped is better than not shipped. But usually you have the moment, ability to take a breath and ultimately make a little bit more of a weighed decision.
Yeah.
And that is where entrepreneurship differs dramatically from gambling.
I know that a lot of times, and especially a lot of these successful businesses, especially if you're looking at some of the biggest companies like YouTube and PayPal, what they do now is not what they started doing initially.
Totally.
So a lot of times they, their failure may not have been as dramatic or environment influence as current events, but they still had things that caused them to shift, things that were outside their control, and they were able to identify and look for opportunity with the decisions they could control and the information they had to get to that plan B. So the whole idea of getting to plan B as fast as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, fail fast.
Action early on is greater than planning. Personally, I have a tendency to spend a lot of time planning. I love creating these intricate plans and seeing how everything connects. However, at the end of the day, often those plans are based on assumptions, they're based on old data or things that are just out of date. And then you go take that plan to action and the whole thing falls apart and you have to shift everything anyway. And mantra I've been repeating a lot is to just take action, get data, go back to the planning and find a balance between knowing where you're going, taking action, and putting the information together. How does that apply to the small businesses that you're dealing with today?
It's a really tricky balance, and I think you have to be aware of who you are and who your leadership team is to sort of strike that balance correctly. The entrepreneurship approach means that you've got to have the right balance on your team, which sometimes your team is just one. So you have to figure out, okay, what's my meeting cadence, or when am I going to sort of pull back and look at the broad view here versus zooming into the weeds? We need both. And we need both in spades. And so, listen, you can't spend all your time on strategy. You're going to do nothing, right? But if you also don't know where you're headed, you're going to spin in circles. For those that are more in Camp A, which I think is the overwhelming majority of entrepreneurs, where are you going, man? How can we work backwards and how do we prioritize what we're doing so that we're not just putting out fires or chasing cats, but we're looking at root causes and we're really amplifying your business? And then for those who can't take action and are stuck in planning, it's like, okay, what's holding you up? We're going to check back in on this on 90 days. We're narrowing the lens for the next 90 days. I don't want to hear anything about this again because we're going to test it. We've already agreed on what these success metrics are, when we're going to measure and all of this. And then I promise we can iterate if we're off course. We're going to put that meeting on the calendar and then just say, it's time to work.
Especially from a marketing standpoint, when you're trying to identify or communicate the value you deliver, to get out of the mindset of, hey, I deliver this product or this service. The idea is you're a solutions provider and your audience needs something, right?
Yep.
And right now you're delivering this product, which happens to be the solution they want, but that might not be true 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So to keep the mindset that it's going to keep evolving, and really it's more of the value that you're putting on of being a solutions provider, not the product itself.
Totally.
What are some of the most common or typical barriers, whether self-imposed or environmentally imposed on them, come up that usually need to be addressed?
Well, there's always the challenge of handing over the hat. There's a lot of challenge for owners to give up some of the control and to pay for the privilege of that. Then, of course, it's the ever challenge that we've all faced as employers, which is just managing talent, right? It's we are human. It's tricky. What motivates us, what inspires us is always changing. I found that being an employee and an employer in COVID times has been one of the most difficult landscapes in terms of HR, feeling like we're in a good place. We have a good rhythm with how to communicate with our folks, and we start to understand situational leadership, the curve of change, all of that, because that's difficult. That's a lot of in-flight coaching, both to my client and then my client to their people. Yeah. That's just an ongoing, that's a life's challenge.
What I had seen was guys that were like really talented or skilled with, their hands and, craftsmen or contractors had a significantly harder time growing their business or getting hands off, because at the end of the day, they could fall back on going, I can do the work. Like, I know I can go in and get the work done. People that were aware of that going, hey, I know I can't hold a paintbrush. I'm going to have to train people. Like, I'm going to have to learn how to get the right people in place. And those were the people that actually I saw grow their business faster and stronger, especially year from year. There was no option for them. They knew they had to commit to becoming a better leader and growing the business, because at the end of the day, there's no way they could pick up a paintbrush and paint. They just were bad at it. Like, have you experienced or seen things like that where a lot of times people have a hard time transitioning away because in their mind, they leave that option going, hey, at the end of the day, I can just go do the work?
Sometimes how that conversation manifests itself is, are you the right CEO for this company? Right? You've built it. You get to own it. But at the end of the day, if you want to be the one who's delivering product and you're going to deliver product the best, is it time for us to hire your boss? I got to cap his billable hours or we're never going to resolve the problem, because he'll just always lean into working more. And then it's like, we don't even need a staff. You're just going to be the product forever. And then we can't grow. Our capacity is you. So a lot of times it comes from more of a mathematical conversation of just, this is what we can charge per unit of you. This is how many units of you we can create. Are you good with that? Or is it time for a new leader? Is it time for you to give up being so in control of in this case scenario, the painting and the craftsmanship, right?
What's one big thing that stood out from our talk today? It's like one thing that either that stood out to you or something that you think someone who's listening or watching should go do or apply, that you're like, hey, I think this is something that most people or you can value from.
I think everyone should sort of be in touch with where they're trying to go, right? It's this map of what they're trying to get and why. Do you want the big title? Do you want the direct reports? Do you want X dollars? Do you want more time at home? A lot of those things are gonna be intention, and that's fine, but they can be prioritized and they can tell you, should you be off doing something different than what you're currently doing? I think we don't take the time in our personal life to do that, even us business owners, even probably you, Marcel, but these skills very much apply to that, right? And disciplines. And if you do take this moment to take all this introspection and apply it to what you want from your life, you might get some different answers than what you've signed up for. And that might put you into a different direction. That's wonderful.
Picking a hypothesis for your life, like saying, hey, I think this is what I want. Go test it. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be some risk. Get out there, expand your world, bring back the knowledge you have, and then do it again.